Hello, I'm Renee Legg. I am a principal lawyer at Novum Law Group, and we help people with their life decisions and making sure that they plan, grow, and protect their future. I'm about to speak with Prosper about Novum Law Group and how we can help you to plan, grow, and protect.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we dive into the stories that not only just inspire, but will actually make you feel like you are in the right room, catching insights firsthand. Now, today I'm bringing in a guest I am so excited about, who's going to be walking us through the right path to plan, grow, and protect our future, using legal aid. Now, Renee, how are you doing today?
I'm very, very well, Prosper. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. But before we get all excited, you do have a bit of a disclaimer that you want to put across, to our audience today.
Certainly, any information that we discuss today, of course, is always subject to the fact that it's general information, and it does not apply to everybody. And therefore, in your circumstances, if anything is discussed here, you must get your own independent legal advice.
Absolutely. Well, now that we've got the legalese out of the way, let's have fun, Renee. For those that are watching today, thank you so much for tuning in, because we're in for a treat as we host the formidable Renee Legg, who is the founding principal partner at Novum Law Group, and she is a true powerhouse in the legal arena. Now, just for a bit of context, I want you to know that Renee has actually carved out a unique path in the property law world, and her journey started back in 1991 when she actually graduated at Monash University with a law degree. And from her early days in a Melbourne boutique firm to now leading Novum Law Group, now Renee has actually redefined what it means to be a legal specialist who genuinely follows their clients through every chapter of their lives. Now, this is a lot different to what we're used to, and I think Renee is going to be walking us through all of that. So I encourage you to tune in, because by the end of this, you might actually feel like you've journeyed a few steps first into Renee's shoes, or maybe even caught a glimpse of yourself there too, based on the journey that she has taken to redefine what it actually means to be a trusted advisor, especially in the legal front. And don't you worry, I'll be obviously taking us through this journey, asking Renee about her past, what really shaped her approach in this legal practice, and why she's the person we need to start paying attention to. Now, Renee, I could go on and talk about things that I have no, expertise to talk about, and you might actually just stand up and say, "Objection, Your Honor." So before we we get to that stage, let's take a little bit of a step back. What first drew you into the legal world?
Well, it's interesting. When I first started as a young lawyer, you're interested in how lawyers can help people around them, because law is such a broad area. You can help people in so many different ways. And I think it comes firstly from an interest in working with people, and being interested in their stories. I think that's really probably the first thing. And so as a young lawyer, back in 91, I commenced practice in a boutique firm in the city, and it was an incredible journey because we had clients across many areas of law, and I was most fortunate to have practiced in a wide area, including things like family law, commercial law, litigation, and of course property law, and Wilson Estates. But then as the years went on, you gain a knowledge, and I guess you gain I suppose you have favorite areas of law that you like to practice. And that can come because you may like to relate to your clients in a certain way. And and over time, I realize I really enjoy working with people in realizing their goals. So people who might have commercial matters, or they might have plans about their wills and estates, or in property transactions, they have an idea about what they are trying to achieve, and it always interested me in how to help them achieve that and walk with them on that journey. And that's really what drew me to those aspects of law to start with.
Fantastic, and thank you so much for taking us on that particular journey since 1991. But Renee, I don't know if you know, I've got two girls. One is 9 at the time of recording, and the other one is 5. And just
Lovely.
a couple of months ago, it was Halloween, and the youngest one insisted on being a witch. You know, he
As they do.
absolutely. And in my heart, I was just praying and hoping that's not going to be a career choice. And, just looking at that sort of scenario in and of itself, how did was this like a childhood dream of yours, or how were you exposed to law before that time in 1991?
I think growing up, and I grew up in Malaysia, there were, and I'm sure this is probably a common theme in many migrant stories, is that you grow up and your parents have expectations of what you should be. And you either are going to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, or maybe even a dentist. And I guess though that is the sort of idea that was fed into my mind. And to start with, I have to be honest, I was actually going to be an engineer, and I initially got into an engineering course at Melbourne. But when I started the course, I realized, oh, maybe this is not quite for me. This is not as people oriented as I at the time wanted it to be. And so I decided perhaps law, where you're always working with people, would be a better choice. So at that point, I made the decision to change. And initially, it was a very drastic change for me, because, a science-minded person is quite different from an arts and law. The way you think, the way you process information is quite different. And so initially, it was quite a mind shift. But as I progressed in my law degree, it was so interesting, because everything about law is about how we do our lives every day. It impacts every aspect of life. How you do things, how you do achieve things, how do you want to plan and grow. And so it's the I always see law as the connecting thing between people, between their goals, between what they want to do. And so the law helps people achieve everything that they want to do. Um, and so as I did my law degree, it became more and more interesting, because, during the law course, you are studying about cases. Some of it is studying cases. Apart from studying the law, you're studying about cases. And why do you study the cases? Because you're studying how the law is applied. And when you understand the law, you're actually understanding people. It's not an abstract thing. You're actually trying to see how human behavior is, because the law is there to govern how people behave and how we relate to one another. How do we control things, because my rights are not superior to your rights, but there is this constant balancing of people's goals, their dreams, and what they want to do. And so the law is there to try and find a balance between people, which is constantly fascinating.
Absolutely, and I quite like that. And thanks for sharing that snippet of wanting to have been an engineer. Now, You did mention there's a whole difference, when you're dealing with being an engineer and also dealing with people. There's a whole right brain, left brain component that goes into that, and things of that nature. And when you started stepping into law being a thread within our life, that is literally what makes a civilized society. Because if the law didn't exist, just if somebody's driving, respecting that red light, it's now a civil construct where, yes, that red light symbolizes your own safety. It symbolizes you arriving at your own place. Now, I've been to places where people have no respect of that. As long as they can pass, they can go. You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
what you guys are doing is absolutely amazing. But you were exposed to different types of law when you were at the boutique firm. Why property law per se?
Well, when I first started, there was quite a bit of litigation that we were involved in, and I have to say I did enjoy litigation. And litigation is quite different from what I do now as in property law, because I think in litigation you have to love that courtroom and that atmosphere of being, I suppose, against someone in a matter. It is very exciting. It is, but it can also be quite a stressful position. But so what I found was that as I was doing litigation matters and also the more commercial or property matters, I enjoy the property and commercial more than this constantly being in, I suppose, like an adversarial system within the litigation sphere. It's very exciting. I did enjoy it, but over time, and I guess that was sort of partly affected by the fact that I then ended up with young kids. I wanted something that wasn't so adversarial with that high stresses of high levels of stress. So I I guess I took on more of the property and commercial matters, which I think I also found more interesting because it meant I was actually relating to people to achieve their goals rather than in a constant stress position where they were constantly stressed. I was able to be in a space where they were actually building goals. They had some sort of a plan, and I was there to help them along that journey, which I found much more rewarding from that point of view.
Absolutely. I remember when we first had this conversation, I was saying, the thing about lawyers is I would just look at myself and say, I don't have enough hair for them to be able to sweep the courtroom, using my head as a mop. So that's why I stay clear of anything that might,
Yes,
put me in that
yes.
litigious sort of space. But obviously, this is something that, like you say, there's an adrenaline filled. It's quite exciting for those parties involved, and there's a win or lose zero sum game sort of set up
But
that.
it is also, I think one thing about litigation which needs to be mentioned is that, it is such a vital part of what we do because there are many matters where parties have a dispute, but they don't all end up in court. And it's really only a very small percentage that end up in court, or if they do end up in court, not all of them proceed to a hearing because fortunately a lot of people do see some sense, and the court definitely tries to drive people to mediate, perhaps conciliate, and then try and find some resolution through it without actually having to go to a court hearing. So, and litigation, I suppose, is really like the last resort in a dispute matter. But it is important because it can't be helped when you have people involved that there will be disputes because there will be misunderstandings. And also, there will be people who don't quite do the right thing. And so, the court is there to make sure that people can find a resolution to the disputes that they face, and that there's hopefully some sort of a fair or reasonable outcome from that dispute. But certainly, law is such a wide area. There's so many areas of law that don't actually involve disputes, and I do practice in that. Although some of my matters do end up in disputes as well. So
Absolutely. But the interesting fact about all of this is you've chosen this side of law where contracts, agreements, and that back and forth of just making sure that if somebody's going to be signing a property agreement, they have taken everything into consideration because agreements sort of stop disagreements later on in life, and you just want to make sure that everyone is in place. Now, I've been sort of tracking your progress and things of that nature. You've gone on from that boutique law style, and you've gone on and started your own firm, Novum Law Group.
yes, we have. We have.
Congratulations.
Thank
What's
you very much.
being the co-founder or co-principal at this place?
Well, I think back in 2022, when we were considering this, it was a case of trying to find a niche market, but also finding our own space. I think that was important, and to find out how we can do it our way, and provide probably a more personal service to our clients. And so that's probably what guided us on that journey. And it has been a very interesting and very fascinating journey through which we have met some incredible people. When you're starting up a business, you do meet a lot of people who help you on that journey, because there's a lot to learn when you are in an environment where you are not the one driving the business, and to now being in that position, it has been an incredibly exciting journey.
Absolutely, and congratulations. Now, in my culture, you did mention, you're from Malaysia and stuff, but in my culture, we've got a statement that says if you want to go far, you go alone. But if you want to go further, you go together. And I'm supposing, throughout, like you said, law is part and parcel of our day-to-day being, starting off from even your birth certificate to wills, marriage certificates, from their trusts and whatever it is that then happen within some sort of somebody's life cycle. At any point, you are punctuated by some sort of legal form that you have to sign in, or some sort of legal contract that you need to enter into. And the wealthier you get, the properties, all the other trusts and all the things that need to be
Structures.
worked on. Now, you're known for maintaining long-term relationship with your clients, and working with them every step of the way. First of all, don't you get bored just talking to the same people?
On the contrary, Prosper, I don't get bored. I, in fact, value those relationships. And that is probably one of the things that I find most rewarding about practicing in the property sphere, in the commercial and in the Wilson Estate sphere, is that we actually walk with our clients, and we journey through them, with them, through different aspects of their lives. So, with the different things that they might get into in their lives, we're there with them. They will often reach out to us and say, look, do you think this is right? Do you think I can do it this way? What can I do, etc.? And it is very rewarding to be able to walk with them and guide them along the way, because we see ourselves first and foremost as giving a service that assists our clients, not only to define what those goals are, but then to also map a pathway out for them to reach those goals. And often we find we're not just working with the clients, but we are also helping them and their families, because we might start off working with mum and dad, but we then find that we're working with their children as well, or their nieces or nephews. They will come to us over time, because when we work with our clients, we do generally want to create a relationship with them. First and foremost is the relationship, because unless you understand your clients, unless you understand their backgrounds, it is very difficult to give them good advice because you need to know what's going to work out for them. And it's always about what is going to be in the best interest of your clients. And to be able to do that, you need to understand their families, themselves, their families, and their wider area around their lives. And that is a very rewarding journey.
Mm.
Very rewarding indeed.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, for those that don't quite understand, I'm supposing the relationship that you have with your clients is that one where somebody says, I'll get my lawyers or I'll get my people to speak to you because they already know who it is that you're dealing with. Whereas some of us don't quite have people like that in our corner. And when you're getting into any sort of battle, legal, confrontation with people, you don't quite know what the next logical step would be. So this is the kind of thing that you take your clients through. Like, you go with them to negotiations, you sit with them, when they're being offered new things, and you read the terms and conditions for them. I don't know. Do you also do that for?
That's right. Yeah. So I think what normally will happen is that clients will come to us and they have an idea about what it is that they're wanting to achieve. Whether it's some sort of a property venture or they might have, deceased estates or whatever it is, but there will be a goal that they would like to achieve. And so what we try and do is to get to the nuts and bolts of exactly what it is that they want. And when we understand what they want, we can see a better pathway through it, and then we can start negotiating with the other party. Because then both sides, or if there's both parties, or however many parties there are, we try and find a reasonable middle ground that will achieve everybody's outcomes that they would like to achieve in that specific transaction.
Mm,
And when we can understand that, is when we can actually make sure that any documentation that they sign is reflective of what they've agreed upon. More importantly, that it is also fair, because you don't want any one-sided agreements, which will not be fair. And in the long-term relationship of that client with the other party, it's probably not a good thing anyway. So you do want to achieve transactions which are also fair in the long run, but most importantly, will meet your client's needs.
absolutely. Now, Renee, indulge me here for a little bit. I don't think you even left engineering, because what you are now doing is engineering people's lives. Because if your life is punctuated by all these, legal things that you have to encounter, from property, the conveyancing of actually buying and selling a property, maybe wills, powers of attorney, and maybe somebody going into retirement age, maybe aged care, whatever, loans, mortgage advice, or even buying a phone. There's terms and conditions. I don't think I even read the terms and conditions of my mobile phone. So you literally engineering people so that they have a happier existence in the most amicable way possible.
Prosper, you are so right, and I think you've probably hit the nail on the head in the sense that there is a bit of engineering, but it comes more from having to understand, and a little bit like engineering, I guess. You're trying to create something, you're trying to make something, and in law, it's certainly in the areas of law that we practice in. We are trying to grow something for our clients, and it is important when we're doing that to actually look at the nuts and bolts, because the clients rely on us. They come to us. They should be able to say to me, Renee, this is what I'd like to do. Can you please make it happen? Then it's my job. It's my job to put the parameters in place, to open up options, to look and see what is out there. How can I best protect my client while we are trying to achieve that goal? And sometimes the goal is not always clear. Sometimes it is through talking to the client and maybe even talking to the other parties that are involved in the transaction before we can get a very clear idea about what it is that is going to be the best outcome for the client. But once we do decide what that best outcome is, and provided, of course, it's approved by the client, then we set about trying to make sure that we put in place the structures. It could be the agreements, and taking steps that will help the client to get there.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I guess it is a little bit like engineering, but engineering with people, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you look at an athlete and somebody who's, on the, even, singers or whatever it is, they have teams around them. Let's look at an athlete. They have a nutritionist, they have somebody who looks at their mental well-being and things of that nature. They have somebody for strength and conditioning and stuff like that. And I am now starting to see the reason why a lot of people don't really progress in life is the fact that they don't have people in their corner like yourself that can actually tell them, you know what, we're going after this, we can do this, and this is what we just need to look at, and things of that nature. Something of that nature. So I don't know if you can see yourself in that sort of position for a lot of people.
Yes, yes, in some ways, yes, yes, it is because um, I would hope that through my experience in the work that I've done, that I have seen different options and different things and awareness and knowledge, I suppose, or skill in different areas. So that when a client comes to me, and I would hope that people do share it because sometimes, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. And despite the fact that there is so much on Google nowadays, or whichever search engine or Chat GPT, there is still a lot of misinformation about how the law works or how life works, because law and life is just interconnected, isn't it? And how people go about doing their lives. And so I often say to people, don't assume that you can Google something and that you'll get the right answer, because not forgetting that ChatGPT is only a very, very general information out there. There is specific knowledge, there is specific skill and how to apply the knowledge. So I say to people, if you've got a question, that is of a legal nature, talk to a lawyer, because they will be able to say, yes, this is possible, these are the options, or no, that's not possible because X, Y, and Z. But also, we don't work in isolation as lawyers. When we talk to our clients, we often have to be guided by other expertise that's available as well. So it might be talking to a financial planner. Is this option a good one? Are there other different things that you can do that will achieve this goal, but not going down this pathway? Let's try another pathway. Or an accountant. For property law, for example, an accountant and financial planners are people that we work with very closely because they they touch so heavily on the things that we do for our clients. So it's important to get the financial side right, and it's important to get the accounting and the tax side right. So when we craft a pathway for our client through their transaction, we are reaching out to all these experts and making sure that this is what is right for you, because it will give you least risk. It will maximize your tax outcome, or minimize tax to maximize your financial outcome. And also, I think another aspect that is important is that whenever we craft transactions for our client, we're also looking into the future. We're saying, how is this going to look like for your family? And then once you've achieved this specific outcome, how do you protect it for your future family needs? And that's when the estate planning side of things become very important to understand as well in what we do.
Absolutely. That's you're really touching up on a lot of facets, especially when it comes to somebody's life and well-being and things of that nature. And with what you're saying, obviously you don't want to be, like the people that people call you when things have gone wrong. You want to have been there along the way, and things of that nature. And you also mentioned the fact that people take it to Google or the latest AIs or whatever chat GPT to get answers or instant sort of information. But don't you think the reason why people do that is because a lot of lawyers, and I'm saying this without love and respect, we have a feeling or have an assumption that the moment you pick up the phone, and especially people who've got very long names like me, say I'm Prosper Taruvinga, they're already they're already charging $1 per answer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so again, I think there is a misconception out there about how lawyers work, because lawyers are probably one of the most highly regulated professions, and we have to follow quite strict rules about what we can charge, not what, but how we charge clients, and more particularly how we inform our clients about how we will be charging. So the law does require us to provide cost guidelines. So it's not always a matter of, ring me and then I'll be charging you every minute. But before any of that happens, certainly with our journey, I need to understand what you are trying to achieve, first of all. I need to know roughly what your end goal is. And then how I can help you in that journey. Sometimes I can't help you and I'll have to say to you no. And we might have had a long discussion and I won't charge you anything for it. Other times I might be able to charge you for it because, and I'll tell you up front, I'll say, okay, we're going to talk about this matter. I will give you options and this is what I'm going to charge you for the initial consult, for example. So most clients, when they talk to a lawyer, will know from the start, what that charging is going to look like. And it is only after that, when the client has been advised about how that is all going to work up, that the charging will actually start. So, for example, in a transactional matter, a client might come to me. We might have a chat first, and that first discussion could be a fee-free consult because it is an initial consult. It's like a discovery call, really, to say, okay, Prosper, what is it you want to achieve? Okay, you want to achieve A, B, and C. What can I help you with? Is it just step B? Is it just step C? Now, if you want to do step B, this is what's involved. If you want to do step C, this is involved, and these are the charges. And so I'll tell you right from the start what those charges will be so that there are no surprises.
Yeah, but I don't think a lot of people are aware of that. I've never called anyone and they said, "Hey, sorry, I'll give you a call back. I'm in my lawyer's waiting room, waiting to speak to my lawyer just for a yearly checkup, to see if everything."
Yes. Yes, I think people tend, probably unlike the doctor where your health is like a regular thing which you need to check up, probably not so much with law, except for the fact that we do say to clients, in respect of their wills and estates, it is a little bit like your health. It's like your legal health checkup. And while you might go to your doctor every year, what we say to people is that with your wills and estates and your estate planning, it is something you ought to be looking at every couple of years. And also whenever life circumstances change. So you don't want to wait, as you say, you don't want to wait till something goes wrong, or you don't want to wait till something feels a bit wrong. Check in with your lawyer. But as you check in with your lawyer, you'll find, for example, when we do give free health checkups for our client in their estate planning, we will give them 20 minutes and we'll say, look, let's look at what documents you've got. We won't charge you, but if those documents need to be amended, then we'll say, yeah, okay, well, we can change them, and then these are what the costs will be. So at all times, you will know what's going to be charged to you. There won't be surprises.
Mm, You see, you've really transformed my view of, lawyers in this conversation here. Because my assumption really was the moment you pick up the phone and you're like, "Hey guys, I need help." The guys in green, Jack, that cap, what do you call it? The black,
Their robes and
the
their
robe and thing
robes.
on the wig, and he's already going to the courtroom, and I'm like,
Well, Well, I suppose, every area of law is slightly different in how it can be billed. And it's a little bit tricky too sometimes because, when you go to a dentist, for example, until the dentist is able to look at your teeth and done the x-rays and everything, they don't really know what needs to be done. And sometimes and so until they know what needs to be done, they can't actually give you a full, I guess, a full view of what the fees will be. They can't give you an estimate. It's a little bit like that in law as well, because if someone said to you, "Oh, I've got a family law matter. Can you tell me how much it will be?" Well, we don't know. Does it involve children? Does it involve just the property? Do you have many assets or do you just have the one asset? If those assets are overseas, what will it be to actually litigate that matter? Do you have a spouse that's going to fight you all the way, or will your spouse be agreeable and you can come to a very, very amicable agreement right from the start? So there are very many variables to a matter in law, and it depends on how the clients react, how the other parties react. There are some matters from the outset you think, oh my gosh, this is going to be so easy. But then it turns out that it's not, because you might have a difficult client, or the other party particularly can be very, very difficult, or it can be even in fact affected by how difficult the other lawyer can be. So then all of a sudden, any sort of cost estimate that you provide, throw that out the window, start all over again. And then that's when you have to educate your client. Hey, I gave you an estimate, but look, this is what's happened in the meantime, and this is what's affecting the costs. So I think part of the challenge for us as lawyers, or for any profession, is to really explain to the clients how those costs are estimated for you and what can change during the process. And at any time as a client, it is your matter. You have a right to ask. You have a right to ask if there's anything that you are not sure about. You need to say, hey, I don't understand this. And most of the time, in fact, all of the time, your lawyer will be happy to explain it to you, because in the end, we want our client to be happy with the outcome. And the client can only be happy if it meets their expectations, if it meets their goals. So it is vitally important for us that we have that understanding with our clients.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, since we've really blown, a lot of people's minds by now, I do understand and respect that, within your profession, you've got client, professional, privacy and things of that nature. But maybe we can maybe go through a case, like you said, you read cases and things of that nature, because so many people might not see themselves in a particular situation, and they will think, as the Aussies say, she'll be all right, mate, and only to realize that there's that lawyer who is literally waiting to on the other
That's
side.
it.
All right,
That's
so
it.
yeah, so because fish don't see the water that they swim in. If maybe you can
No.
walk us through, just maybe a case that obviously left a lasting impact on maybe yourself, or helped a client be doing have a happier existence.
I think it comes from knowledge. And that knowledge comes from working closely. If you've got a legal matter, you need to work closely with your lawyer. And most of us, like, if I went to a dentist, I wouldn't know anything about my teeth, right? I don't know what to expect. And so it is the dentist's job to take me on that journey to tell me what are the options, what can go wrong. And just like in law as well, and law more particularly, because you're dealing with people and you can never expect how people will behave. And so what a lawyer needs to be able to do is to give some guidance to their clients about what is possible, what are the possible outcomes within the context of the circumstances. And we do that by knowing what the cases are that have been decided. We do that by understanding what the law says about it. and what the likely outcomes are, because we've come across them before or other cases have come across them before. So for example, let's say, let's say I'm crafting a sale of a business for a client, and they are wanting to sell a business that has a restaurant, maybe alcohol, and maybe some gaming room or something like that. Now, a client who might not have the experience in wanting to buy a business like that, they won't know what can go wrong. They will know what is going to be needed to be in that contract, because they will come to you, and particularly if it's a novice person in business, they won't understand what the risks are, and it's up to us when we talk to them. We need to assess: is this client an experienced client? Because if it's a sophisticated client, they will already have formed ideas about what they want that transaction to look like. But if it's not a sophisticated client, they are new to the whole area, then we need to bring all of that expertise that we have, and take that extra care in watching out for them. And that means being very, very detailed about the questions we ask them, so that we can see where the gaps in their knowledge are and fill those gaps. Because we will have seen in other cases where certain provisions are not put in, for example, that it can go wrong. And so we need to make sure that that is actually set up correctly. Or we might have found out from other cases that we know that might have gone through courts, deciding on, say, restrictive covenants, restraint of trades, those sorts of things. How the court interprets those sorts of cases. So, for example, let's say in a sale of business, it is not uncommon for a purchaser to want the vendor to sign a restraint of trade. So it means then, as a buyer of that business, I don't want my vendor to then go on 2 days down the track after they settle with me to set up a competing business. So we want to have restraints in there. But what sort of restraints will be reasonable? Do we say that the vendor cannot work forever and ever? What sort of area should they be working in? Is it a 10-mile radius from this business? Is it 10 years that they can't work in this business? And so often what we find is that the courts have looked at all of these cases, because they will try and balance the right of the purchaser and the right of the vendor, in this case that we're talking about, in the case of a business. And so we have to bring that knowledge to the client and say, in any specific time, any specific transaction, what is reasonable, because we have that background knowledge of the cases that have been involved, and we need to guide the clients accordingly, because they won't know necessarily.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times would you, as an individual, be buying and selling a business? You wouldn't have that particular experience. I mean, even if we're looking at property in the real estate sort of side of things, from my understanding, very few people go past the first property, second property, third property. So you're not doing those transactions on a daily basis. Whereas, people like yourself are engaged with that, and you've got access to like precedent or things that have happened in the past and match that together. Now, for clients who might be a little bit nervous or intimidated by this whole legal process, I mean, from what you're saying, you're literally hand-holding them so that they can have amicable agreements with the people that they're going to be dealing with. What would be the best way that people can get a hold of you, Renee?
Well, they contact me by phone. They can contact me by email. I'm also on WhatsApp, which is another medium which I find my clients are happy to use. But I think that the word hand holding, I think, is probably what is quite a correct thing, because, as you say, not everyone goes through these transactions often. And what we try and do very hard is to make it as seamless for the clients as possible. So if there are problems that arise, we try and resolve them before it even hits or goes to the client. We want to avoid all of that situation to start with. and that's making sure agreements are correct. But then if problems do arise, we want to try and resolve them before we have to trouble the client. And it's only when things cannot be resolved that we need to talk to the client and say, hey, hang on, this has now occurred. What would you like to do? So we try and shield the client from the troubles or from the stresses of the transaction if we can help it. Because, no client wants to have a problem. No one wants their lawyers ringing them every few minutes saying, hey, this problem has arisen. What do you want me to do? Basically, if I was the client, I'd like you to say, I'm solving it, leave it in my hands. Only come to me if you absolutely have to. And that is certainly the process we try to do and we try to use with our clients.
Absolutely. And obviously, it really shows that you're committed to evolving alongside your clients and the law itself. And for those that haven't noticed, Novum actually means new, fresh, and novel. And this is something that, it's a breath of fresh air, especially in the legal space. It's no longer one of those, with dust being
No,
and all the
I
legal.
think you're right, Prosper. You are so very right. What we would like to do is to actually inform our clients. We want to be able to educate our clients, so that we are not the ones making the decisions for them. We want to arm them with the knowledge, so that when they're making decisions, they are the ones making it for themselves with the full knowledge, not from being told by us what to do, but they're actually making the active decisions themselves.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below so that people can actually get started with you. And the fact that you are on WhatsApp, I think it actually changes the game for a lot of people because they just feel like they're speaking to a friend. It's not necessarily speaking to someone that and when people are speaking to a friend, they're more open to giving you all that information that happens. But if people are going to be connecting with you on WhatsApp, what time then are you going to have to read, play music, family, and the gardening that I've seen you
That
engage?
I like to do, yes. Yes, well, yeah, look, law is one of those things where it's not always easy to find a balance, because when things are happening in a client's life, it is important to them. You need to be able to meet them at the time, because some of these transactions can cause stress for clients. They cause worry, and like all of us, we want some guidance immediately. And so I try and make myself available as much as I can. And if it is urgent, then certainly, I'll do it even outside of hours. But I do try and have some downtime if I can help it. On the weekends. But, there are some transactions, I think most lawyers will tell you that there are some transactions where your time is superseded by the urgency of the matter.
Absolutely. See, for me, I usually look at law, like you said, you're looking at what has happened in the past to influence what's happening in the future and things like that. Do you have any regrets? Because right now you could have been working with Elon Musk, looking at the next in engineering, or you could have been doing something to do with the environment or whatever it is that's new, exciting, and moving forward. You don't feel like you went the wrong route here.
No, no, actually, it's actually the opposite. I can't imagine that I would ever have worked as an engineer, although sometimes I wonder if I could have. But as I've gone through my career in law, and even now more so, as I develop those relationships with my clients, I value those relationships. So to a lawyer, it's not just a transaction, it's actually a relationship as well. And as I mentioned, there are long-term relationships that I have. And as time has gone on, because I am finding the relationships are what matters to me, it's become more and more enjoyable when I can have those relationships with my client, and it makes work even more meaningful, more rewarding for me, as time has gone on. So no regrets at all. I'm actually very grateful that I have been able to and continue to be able to work in this space, and I hope that I can continue to do it for a long time.
Absolutely. But now, obviously, we've discovered you, you've started this relationship with us. What's next in the future? I mean, given the name of your business, you're going to have to always be coming up with something new or fresh, because if we get to 2058 and we're still doing the same, I think other people will. What's next? What do you
Yes.
expect from Novum?
Well, we being a fairly young firm, Novum, we are really looking to grow. We don't want to be a big firm because we want to still be a very approachable firm. That's probably the main thing for us. So what we would like to see is that we will grow our teams and we will grow perhaps another one or two areas of law. That is certainly our big goal. But we would like to keep there are certain things we don't want to grow, and that is the quality of the relationships we have with our clients. We want that to be first and foremost in our, I guess, our reason for being. And so while we might grow the areas of practice, that our approach will be the same is what we hope for in the future. So some things will stay the same, Prosper.
Well, that's just the way it is. Now, Renee, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, your calmness has just really painted the picture of what Novum is all about. We were not in a rush to go to some court case, or we were not in a rush to, spell out the evidence beyond reasonable doubt. I had a whole case prepared, but I threw that away and I spoke to the human in you.
Thank you, Prosper. I didn't want to be on trial.
I object to that. I really. This would have only the only time that I have in front of me, somebody of your stature, legal console, and I spoke to the human in you, and I really, really appreciate that. And I'm assuming, and I'm hoping, our viewers really got the whole new and novel experience of what, the next frontier of having somebody in your corner like yourself to actually help them be, do, and have a happier existence. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, Prosper. I really enjoyed my time with you, and thank you so much.
Absolutely. And there you have it, folks. That was a deep dive, not just into the expertise, but the empathy behind Renee's legal journey. And if you found yourself resonating with Renee's story, or you're thinking about your own future, your property, or the legacy you want to leave, there's a lot here for you to take away. I really encourage you to maybe rewatch this episode or check out novumlawgroup.com.au. I will put those links in the show notes so that you might, actually start this journey with Renee and her team. And if you got all that you could from this episode, I would actually encourage you to share this with somebody that might benefit from knowing that such legal help exists. So many people are going through stuff in life, and as Renee has mentioned, that law is like that seemingly invisible string that actually connects our day-to-day existence. And you can so see this if you start engaging in property transactions. You're definitely going to need somebody who can find those loopholes or those seemingly safe looking contracts, but they're there to actually just trip you on your way. So we'll keep bringing stories like Renee's, so that you can actually make decisions as to who you want to work with and how you want to engage with people that will help you be, do, and have a happier existence. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode on the Online Prosperity Show that starts right now. Bye for now.